Everybody, welcome to the video. It's Friday, August 13th, and we're breaking down this massive 14-game slate that we have over on DraftKings today. And it's looking like a pretty good slate here. We got some good pitching options and good matchups and good price points, and we have several good stacks to talk about as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to breaking this one down. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. And if you want to take that one step further and become an official member over on Patreon, link is down below in the description for that. And I do cover other sports besides MLB. I do NFL, NASCAR, than NBA when the time comes for that. So if you want to check it out, you know where to find it. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by PrizePicks. I'm sure most of you know what it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified. Just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions, or anything like that. Just you versus the props that they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, if you're a new signee over on PrizePicks, you can use code CPEN to get an instant deposit match up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. But I think that's it for the plugs for the most part, so without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as always, we'll start with the pitchers, then move on to the bats. And we'll start up top with Zach Wheeler, $10,300, the most expensive pitcher on the slate. But hey, I totally get it. He went the full 9 innings with 11 strikeouts in his last start, scoring 49-something fantasy points, close to 50. I mean, it was an absolutely awesome start. You can't expect that each and every single time out, but matchup here versus Cincinnati, I wouldn't say it's that great, but getting away from Great American Small Park is definitely a boost for them because obviously it's one of the best places to hit. Philadelphia, I mean, it's not really a pitcher's park there, but I think Zach Wheeler will be just fine. He has plenty of experience pitching in Philadelphia. And the Reds, while they do have a pretty solid offense, guys like Joey Votto, Jesse Winker, Jonathan India, Nick Castellanos, it's a pretty good offense. But getting away from Great American Small Park, it's going to be a downgrade for them. 3.73 applied team total against them, 61% chance for a win, and a 7.5K prop over in Vegas. And if we're looking at his numbers on the season, they have been superb. A nice ERA right below 2.5, xFIP around 2.7, Sierra in the low threes, close to a 30% K rate, doesn't really walk too many guys. And the one thing Zach Wheeler really excels at is limiting the hard contact power and homers, less than a 100 ISO given up on the season, over a 50% ground ball rate, only a 22.7% hard contact rate allowed, with 0.6 homers allowed per 9. So Zach Wheeler, if you got the money for him, he's one of the absolute best options on the slate. Now, I'd probably try my best to get him and Robbie Ray in together, and it's really not breaking the bank because Robbie Ray is way too cheap for some reason. I'm not sure why he's not in the 10K range, but you're getting him at in my opinion, a pretty good value at $9,200. So speaking of Robbie Ray here, he draws one of the best matchups you can ask for as a lefty versus Seattle. They have really struggled versus them all season long. If you look at their splits versus left-handed pitching, it's pretty ugly. A 27% K rate, a 169 ISO, a Wobin OBP below 300, and only a 90 WRC plus. And Robbie Ray's got a really good strikeout rate. He's been really good all season long. He's had a couple of bad games here and there, especially lately, but he shouldn't struggle in this matchup versus Seattle. It's just a pretty bad lineup. Over a 30% K rate on the season, a 2.9 ERA, 3.5 xFIP, 3.3 Sierra. I mean, the only bad thing about Robbie Ray is he gives up power, a 190 ISO on the season, also has more fly balls than ground balls, and about 1.5 homers per 9 with a 35% hard contact rate. But it's Seattle, so you don't really have to worry about that too much. A 3.72 implied team total against them, pretty heavy favorite, and a 7.5K prop as well. I would have a hard time not playing Robbie Ray today once you factor in the price tag and everything like that. Projections have him as one of the best point per dollar pitching options on the entire slate. That's with him being at $9,200. So really like Robbie Ray today. Then we have a couple of SP2 options who I feel like are a bit too cheap in my opinion. Jack Flaherty, $8,300. He's making his return from injury. Although I read that his last start he went 4 innings, 75 pitches in AAA. So I'm assuming it says no restrictions, at least no like significant restrictions, so we should be able to see like probably 80 plus, 85 plus pitches. So if we can get close to 90 here at $8,300, that's fine because Jack Flaherty is a pitcher that could easily be above $9,000. So you're getting him at a discount. Plus, it's a pretty soft matchup versus KC. Outside of Salvador Perez, you're not really concerned about anybody else in this lineup. They don't really strike out too much. Like I think it's like 22% versus righty. Yeah, 22.2% versus righties this season, but only a 143 team ISO and a 86 WRC plus. And Jack Flaherty, we know he's a pretty solid pitcher. I mean, he has his struggles at times, and has a smaller sample size on the season. He hasn't pitched for a long time, so I hate to put really anything into it. Only 62 innings pitched this year, but 2.9 ERA, xFIP close to 4, Sierra's close to 4, but a 26.3% K rate. Typically can limit the power, and he's just a good pitcher. $8,300 seems a bit too cheap, although we really can't expect him to go like 100 pitches, but if he can get us close to 90, I think that's fine at that depressed price point. And then Charlie Morton, $8,300. I'm not really sure why he's this cheap. It just feels like Robbie Ray, Jack Flaherty, and Charlie Morton kind of got priced a little bit too low in my opinion, but hey, we'll take advantage of it. Charlie Morton's a good pitcher, over a 25% K on the season, actually close to 28. A good xFIP of 3.5. Sierra's right around 3.5. 6.5K prop over in Vegas. No implied team total out yet for Washington. If I had a guess, Probably low fours would be my guess. I don't think they'll be in the threes because, I mean, we got guys like Robbie Range, Zach Wheeler in the upper threes here, so probably Charlie Morton will be probably right around 4 where Jack Flaherty is for KC would be my assumption, but I like the strikeout upside. Only $8,300 for a pretty decent matchup here versus Washington. I mean, they lost a lot of guys. Obviously, no Trey Turner, no Yan Gomes, no Josh Harrison, no Starlin Castro. I mean, it's a pretty watered-down lineup at this point. So can't afford the double spend-up with Robbie Ray and Zach Wheeler. I think Charlie Morton's an excellent SP2 option with quite a bit of strikeout upside. But with that being said, that'll be pretty much it for the pitching, so we'll move on to my favorite stacks of the night. The first stack I want to talk about here is the Boston Red Sox versus Spencer Watkins. If you guys remember earlier in the season, Spencer Watkins was getting very lucky because his ERA was like 1.5, but his xFIP and CA were close to 7. I mean, at some point, regression was going to come, and it's definitely hit him recently. I mean, the guy's just not a good pitcher. His ERA is now up to 4.2. The xFIP is a little bit lower now at 5.1, but only a 16% K rate. It hasn't given up a ton of power this year, only a 118 ISO, but he's still not a good pitcher. We can certainly stack pretty much everybody against him. Vegas would agree. Team total close to 7 today for Boston. I mean, I wish they were on the road in Canada Yards. I mean, because I get those guaranteed nothing at bats, but it's a hitter-friendly park in Boston. We can pick on Watkins. We can pick on the Orioles bullpen, so you can sign me up pretty much for all the Red Sox here. Now, a few of these guys are quite expensive. We have Bogarts, Devers, and JD Martinez above $5,000, but guys like Duran's only $3,200. I like that lefty and righty matchup versus Watkins. Love that price point. Kike leading off. Not quite $5,000, but he's getting pretty close to it. But if you're stacking the Red Sox, it's kind of hard to leave off the leadoff guy. Hunter Renfroe, $4,000. I mean, he's at a decent price point. Verdugo hits lower in the order these days, but he's below 4K. And the rest of these guys are kind of lineup fillers, but if you're looking for a cheap catcher, Plawecki's only $3,300. But overall, the Red Sox do look very good today. I imagine they'll be quite popular. I mean, a team total close to 7 is not going to go under the radar by any means, and it's obviously a really good matchup versus Watkins here in the Orioles bullpen, so yeah, I can definitely get on board with all the Red Sox today for the most part. It's just a little bit expensive when you get to the meat of the order, but a guy like Rafael Devers is pretty much the top overall play in the slate today. He crushes right-handed pitching. I realize he's close to $6,000, but I mean, batting cleanup here, I'd be very shocked if Devers doesn't get a couple of extra base hits, if not a homer today. Then the next stack I want to talk about is right above the Red Sox here. We have the Tampa Bay Rays on the road, Minnesota versus Michael Pineda. And any single time the Rays get away from the Trop, I'm always going to have interest as long as they're facing a not like an elite level pitcher. Michael Pineda is not an elite level pitcher. He's the guy that gives up quite a bit of power. I wouldn't say he's the worst pitcher in the world, but a pitcher that gives up power to Tampa Bay, which is a team that has power, they will strike out quite a bit, but Michael Pineda is not a big strikeout guy. So the Rays actually do profile pretty well here versus Pineda. If we're looking at his splits on the season, he's giving up over a 200 ISO, 40% fly ball rate, 33% hard contact rate, and about 1.5 homers per 9. Again, not the worst pitcher in the world, but giving up over a 200 ISO is always going to catch my eye, especially versus a Tampa Bay Rays team. Guys like Brandon Lau, and they're not overly expensive either. Like, sometimes the Rays get really, really pricey. I believe we had like Brandon Lau at nearly $6,000 like a week ago, and that's definitely dropped a little bit. So they're a little bit easier to stack than they were, if you guys remember, just a little bit ago. But Brandon Lau, $4,600. He strikes out a lot, doesn't hit for a high batting average, but he has plenty of pop versus right-handed pitching. 244 ISO on the year, $4,600 leading off. I think he's a great play. Nelson Cruz, the same exact price tag. Prefer him versus lefties, but he knows Minnesota well. I mean, he's going back to the field he's been playing at for many years now, so definitely like Nelson Cruz, Wander Franco, Austin Meadows. If I had to pick my two favorite plays on the Rays, it would be Brandon Lau and Austin Meadows. They're pretty much the same price point, and they're kind of like the same exact player where they don't hit for a high batting average. I mean, it's not, Austin Meadows isn't terrible in the batting average department, but it's not great, 242 batting average. They strike out quite a bit, but they both hit for a good amount of power versus right-handed pitching, and their price tags aren't overly expensive. So Meadows and Brandon Lau batting cleanup and batting leadoff, I think, are two of the better plays on the slate today. Then G-Man Choi, like that price point, Ranger Reese Arena, Joey Wendell, Kevin Kiermaier is free if you need a cheap guy. And then like Mike Zunino, $3,300. He hits for power. That's pretty much it on the season. A 192 batting average with a 320 ISO. So it's pretty much a homer or bust from Zunino. If you're looking at strikeout rate, it's always going to be sky high, 37.5% on the season. But yeah, I like all the Rays here quite a bit. I mean, I don't like them quite as much as the Red Sox, but I mean, overall, this is a pretty easy team to stack. And then the next stack I want to talk about here is the Milwaukee Brewers versus Mitch Keller. They've actually been hitting the ball pretty well recently, and the Pirates pitching staff has been very bad. Like, there's no one to fear in that rotation whatsoever, so you can pretty much sign me up for any team facing them almost every single day at this point. But I like the Brewers here quite a bit. They hit very, very well in Chicago on their little road trip there. Now, they had very good hitting conditions almost every single time, so yeah, it makes sense. But they have a 5.5 implied team total here. It's on the road, so you get those guaranteed at bats. Don't really love using teams in Pittsburgh, but Mitch Keller is just bad enough where I think we can pretty much still use the Milwaukee Brewers here. If we're looking at Mitch Keller's splits on the season, Nothing too pretty here. ERA over 7, xFIP over 5, 20% K rate, a 209 ISO given up, 37.6% hard contact rate allowed, and not really too much in the homer department, but I mean, we can still stack against this guy. I have no concerns whatsoever. We can nickel and dime him to death. I'm sure someone will probably get a homer in this lineup. But Colton Wong leading off, $4,400. One of the better plays on the slate here, hitting for a high batting average and a decent amount of pop this year. Love him versus righties. Same goes for Christian Yelich, although he has been pretty terrible this year. But we know in the past he's been good versus righties. It's just the past couple seasons for Yelich have definitely been pretty gross. I wish they would kind of lower his price point. They're pricing him around guys like Jose Ramirez and guys that he shouldn't be priced around, like Rafael Devers. Like Yelich has not been in their level for a couple years now, but I mean, obviously versus a righty, a pretty bad righty, Christian Yelich will grade as one of the better overall raw points guys on the slate today. Willie Adames has been excellent ever since going to Milwaukee. Eduardo Escobar, he's hit for power all season long, whether it's been with Arizona or Milwaukee. Omar Narvaez, love him versus right-handed pitching, batting around 300 with close to a 200 ISO versus them this year. Garcia, Tellez, Lorenzo Cain, these are kind of lineup fillers, but I do like that price point on Tellez at first base, just a cheap left-and-righty matchup versus Mitch Keller. And then moving on to the last stack I want to talk about here, it's the Cleveland Indians on the road in Detroit versus Tyler Alexander, who's a guy that really struggles with right-handed bats, and the Indians lineup is pretty much all righties for the most part here, so you can sign me up for pretty much all of these guys. And besides Jose Ramirez and Pennell, this is a very easy team to stack. Miles Straw leading off is only $2,600. Rosario's in the low 4K range, and he's been pretty solid versus lefties this year. Jose Ramirez for the past few seasons now has absolutely crushed left-handed pitching. Pennell has over a 300 ISO on the year, batting cleanup here. Then we have Harold Ramirez, who's okay versus lefties, but he's dirt cheap. Oscar Mercado. Like, these guys are free. Once you get past like Harold Ramirez, though, it gets really ugly. So I'd hate the roster any of those guys, the lower half of the order, but they're there if you need them. But the top half of this order is not terrible, and for the most part, I mean, Straw, Rosario, Harold Ramirez are not that hard to fit in. If you are using those dirt cheap guys, I mean, you should be able to fit in the guys like Pennell and Jose Ramirez with them. And if we look at Tyler Alexander's splits this season versus right-handed bats, it's obviously not great, giving up a 43% hard contact rate, 2 homers per 9, a 6 ERA, 5.3 xFIP, an 18% K rate with a 237 ISO with a 380 WOBA, and a 50%, well, he's close to a 50% fly ball rate. So I think the Indians could be a decent cheap stack tonight, and they should allow you to fit in some expensive pitching with an expensive stack with them. So you could go Red Sox, Indians today with probably like a Robbie Ray and Zach Wheeler. I'm sure that could work out. But with that being said, I think that'll be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. If you want the cheat sheet, which is a position-by-position breakdown, and I also have other sports listed on there as well. Follow me over on social media if you want. And don't forget, this video is sponsored by Prize Picks. And as of right now, if you're new signing over there, you can get a free money bonus up to $100 when you use code CPEN and tell them I sent you. But I think that'll be pretty much it. I will stop rambling, and I'll see you guys on Saturday for the next video.